G'day, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about juxtaposition, okay? And we're going to talk about a Gestalt Theory figure to ground, and that kind of leads to juxtaposition. So figure to ground is the main element and the background in a nutshell, and juxtaposition is contrast. So today we're going to talk about, I'm going to bring it up on my computer. This comes out of my Stronger Photo Composition 4-step system. So basically I break down 100 plus different composition techniques and tools into a 4-step system. So all those things are all broken up into 4 groups, and it works like a checklist. So when you're going out and taking a photo, you can go, okay, I need to do this. And what's so great about it and how it creates that strong composition is that you can intuitively, you will start to do it intuitively. Don't be overwhelmed by all those techniques. You'll intuitively set up your photo and you'll go, okay, this is an opportunity to do this and this from bucket 1 or toolbox 1, toolbox 2. Yeah, I only want to do this. Toolbox 3, I'm going to do this. And it becomes natural and it's really exciting. It took a long time to develop that system, put it together. And then step number 4 is where you edit. And inside the course there, I show you how to edit to make those things really pop. And this is one of them, is juxtaposition, which I'm going to get into. But first of all, figure to ground. Where did that come from? It came from 1920s. It's kind of I think it came from Germany. It's been around since the 1920s. Basically, it's a little bit different to composition because composition, the definition is how you arrange things in the scene. But I wanted to introduce more design into photography and helping you design and structure the photos. And I think it's really important to look at photography and look at the photos from the perspective of the viewer looking at your photo. And design has so much to offer because design is advertising, it's building design, it's garden design. There's so many different areas outside of photography that I kind of drew on to bring these into it because it's all relevant, it all works, it's all part of it. So the Gestalt Theory is design principles, and there's quite a few. I've got my list here we go. So, and it seems to be people add more to it all the time. So I have a more extensive list. Where's my more extensive list? Here we go. All right. So I'm not sure if all of these are in there, but this is the big list. Closure, common fate, figure to ground, proximity, similarity, symmetry and order, continuance, organization, simplicity, uniform correctedness. There you go. That's a lot, isn't it? So in a nutshell, figure to ground is actually all of them are all about how your eye and your brain work together to interpret what's going on in that design. Okay, so with composition, what we do is we try and attract your attention, hold your attention, guide your attention to try and get that engagement in the photo and make your photo kind of not just aesthetically pleasing or have some visual tension, but to have it something that just a wow photo, something that stands out from everyone else's. So understanding how people interpret the photo, like how their eye picks up on something and how their brain processes it, I think is really important. So, figure to ground, what the brain does is people look for reasoning. They look for trying to understand and comprehend what it is instantly. Like it's what we do. We try and interpret things quickly, and that's why visuals are interpreted like 60,000 times faster than text, because we can just break it down into its simplest form. Okay, I know what this is about. All right, and that's where visual attention works so well, because you can't work it out instantly, because you've got to take a moment to go, oh, this is not quite right. What's going on here? Oh yeah, oh, that makes me feel uneasy, that's unbalanced, or that sort of thing. But figure to ground, let's use that as the example, because it makes sense. That's what we're going to talk about. So figure to ground. The figure is the main subject. The ground is the background, or the background context to the scene. So instantly, if you can, and that's why I talk about photo intention all the time, because if you know what your intention is, you know what the subject is, that is the figure. That is the main subject. And then everything else is contextual. Now, some people will argue that there's no such thing. Well, not argue, but some people, no one argues in photography, especially mobile photography. We're all very nice. there's no such thing as a background. Okay, that's a common statement that's put out there. Basically, what that means is that there's no such thing as this is what it is. This is a backdrop. Okay, so it's like this is a backdrop that I have behind me here. Okay, so in a photo you would have a backdrop. So in portrait photography, where you're in a studio, you have a backdrop. So a background in landscape, street photography, it has a place. It has a reason for being there. That ground, that background is all contextual. And that's why we've already talked about off-center and rule of thirds, space. We've talked about all these things already. And that is to introduce those contextual elements to give meaning, to give purpose, to give some interaction. Because if the main subject is interacting somehow with the environment where they are, it kind of brings us in a bit more. It's really cool. All right, figure of ground context. When looking at a photo, we instinctively simplify the scene to determine the primary subject, the figure, and what the background, and what is the background, so the ground. The relationship between the two is referred to a figurative ground relationship, so it's that interaction. An unstable figurative ground relationship makes it difficult for the viewer to distinguish the primary subject from the background. And we've all seen those, haven't we? Those really busy, crazy looking photos where you look at it and go, oh yeah, what am I looking at? If someone has to say, what am I looking at? And it's not texture or something like that is the subject, then you've kind of lost them. Generally, objects or areas of the photos that are larger, in focus, high contrast, more vivid colors, isolation, we're going to talk about that one later, separation from the background, stand out. And this is an example here, this one here that I have, that stands out. The marshmallows, like marshmallows on a stick, fantastic. But when you put it in front of a fire, it adds context, doesn't it? You can tell. I mean, instead of looking like moldy marshmallows that have been sitting on the deck for a week, they look like toasted marshmallows. Like it adds more meaning and context. All right, we're going to cover now juxtaposition. Now, you'll hear people use this term quite a bit when they're doing photo critiques or photo feedback. In camera clubs, I use that term quite a bit when I'm doing judging and giving some feedback to the whole group. I'll talk about juxtaposition. That's where it's the contrast. It's elements that stand out against each other. So this one here, you can see there's a strong juxtaposition here. What is it that creates that juxtaposition, do you think? Why does this stand out? So for me, there's a couple of reasons why this stands out. It's in focus. Okay, the figure, the main subject, is in focus. The background is out of focus. So that's the juxtaposition. It is the contrast. Contrast, in a nutshell, is the difference between two things. For so long, I struggled with what contrast was all about, and it is basically that. You got two things. There's a difference. They're not the same. One's black, one's white. The difference is that, black and white. Okay? If you increase the contrast, that becomes darker, that becomes brighter. So now that's a pure black, pure white. If you reduce the contrast between black and white, okay, you're going to add some white to the black, it becomes grey. Add some black to the white, it becomes grey. So they become closer aligned. So the tone difference between the two becomes similar, and there becomes what we call a low contrast. A low contrast, the difference between the two is less. A high contrast, the difference between the two is greater. All right, with me? Fantastic. So when we're talking about juxtaposition, we're talking about the difference in contrast. So it can be lots of different things. So here you can see we have quite a few different elements here that create this contrast, this juxtaposition. We have different height, different size, it's a bit wider, different proportions. Okay, we have different shape, different color. What else can we see? Different texture, different angle. You can see there's quite a few there, isn't there? There's so many different things that make that one different from the others, that make it stand out. Now, this is an example of stacking. This is what I love about what this whole system is, that once you start adding multiple things to the photo, then it becomes more powerful. So if this was exactly the same shape, same color, same shape, same color, same height, and it was just slightly tilted, that's still juxtaposition. But because we're throwing in a bit of this, bit of that, bit of contrasting color, bang, 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 all of a sudden it's like, boom, that really stands out. So I know this is not showing you a photo, I'm showing you a graphic, but I think that really clearly articulates there that when you start throwing in lots of them, it makes a difference there. Color contrast. All right. So color contrast. This is a website, color, COLOR, not how our Australians spell it. So it's COLOR.adobe.com. It's fantastic. And this works brilliantly on your smartphone too. All you need to do, I think you have to use it in vertical mode at the moment. There's still, if you're holding it horizontal, a little message pops up on your mobile. It's really cool saying, hey, we're further developing this. At the moment, it works best in vertical. Or you can do it on your computer here. This is what it looks like when you do it. You get a result like this. It pops up and shows you your photo, and it picks the dominant colors, and it shows you on the color wheel whether they're contrasting or not. Split complementary, that is where you have two contrasting colors on either side of the wheel. So you can see here these flowers that I took. You can see there that the contrast between the pink and the green, or red and green, works really well as well, even more stronger. But because we've got green and yellow against the pink, that's what we call a split complementary. So there, complementary colors are just two colors opposite. Split complementary is where you have two nearby and then one opposite. I digress, getting distracted, aren't I? All right. Just have a look and see what other visual examples I had here. Okay, so there's a strong juxtaposition there. For the same reasons, we have contrasting colors, we have contrasting focus, which makes a difference there. Contrasting textures, shape, there's lots of contrast there with the background. Now you can go and create a black background. Now this is not quite the same because there is no background, so this is not figure to ground, okay? This is just juxtaposition. I like figure to ground. I like having those contextual backgrounds. This is a powerful photo because of the light. That becomes the hero of this photo is the light there. But if we want to have that that figure to ground, that design principle, we kind of need to have something there. And this is why a lot of photos that I treat and I edit like that, I like to keep, even though I'm darkening the background and making the colors pop against the dark background, I quite often like to leave some indication, whether it's just a splash of texture here or something, just to show that, hey, this is not just a photo that's been slapped on top of a black cardboard, if that makes sense. So you'd like to have some connection, that figure to ground relationship that we talked about before. All right. Okay, what else did I have in here? I'll share it with you while I read it. Juxtaposition. So we talk about colors, tones, textures, all that sort of thing. It's really the contrast between the two things. Sometimes, and I touched on this yesterday, sometimes it's difficult to see contrast. Now, when you're looking at contrasting lighting, one of my favorite tips, I can't remember where I picked this up from. I think it might have been watching Mobiography, their YouTube channel. I think I picked it up from there. When you're doing street photography and you're walking around and you're trying to find some shadows and light, that sort of thing, squint. So squint your eyes, and when you squint your eyes, you actually you reduce the distractions. You break things down into more abstract, and when you squint, it blurs things a little bit, and then you notice bright spots a bit, and you're picking up on the bright and dark areas. So you're looking for that contrasting light. So sometimes that's a struggle. Sometimes even it's a struggle to identify contrasting colors because they might be similar, and because the whole Gestalt theory is about how your eyes can trick your brain, and your brain can make assumptions and fill in gaps and all that sort of thing. It's really fascinating if you get into it and have a look at the Gestalt theory, Gestalt. When you do struggle, this is a tip. What you can do is you can go into Snapseed and you can go into so what you do is you can drag those pins in a curves. You can add dots all along and do all sorts of funky stuff. But if you just grab those two and just invert them, so you just go the opposite end, you make the graph, instead of going one way, you make it go the other way, you end up with this instantly. It's super cool. You just become, it looks like it's got a UV filter on it. It just inverts it, and you can see there that the one on the right, that really has a strong juxtaposition. It really pops. It's really strong contrast. So that's why I have that one there. By the way, if you're into filters and UV filters and that sort of thing, Terry in our community put together an amazing article. It's on the website now. It was published last week and talks about all sorts of different filters and what it does and how you can slow down your shutter speed and all that sort of thing. It's really cool. So go check that one out. I'll put a link in the description below. Next juxtaposition is the actual what's in the photo. Okay, so we've talked about composition. We talk about what attracts attention and all that sort of thing. We talk about what holds attention, and positioning of elements and all that sort of thing. So we've got the contrast there to grab our attention, draw, go on a bit of a visual journey, all that sort of thing. Works super cool. Juxtaposition can also be what's in the photo. This is a juxtaposition in buildings. So one is new, sharp, all glass, modern materials. It's imposing. It's tall. Very, very simplified. Simplified, is that what? Anyway. And then on the right, you've got an older building. And the older building has more 3 dimension to it. It's got shape. It's got older textures. It's got layers to it. It's got lots going for it that the other building doesn't. And the other building's got lots for the other one doesn't. But you can see they're very different materials, different height, shape, proportions, and also from a different time. And that's a big thing as well, is that they're from a different era, and that can be a juxtaposition. So you've seen those photos that make us go, oh, when you see an old person and their grandchild, and especially when it's a frail grandparent, like they're a bit older, and that's a strong contrast between the two. And being a human element in the frame, we connect with it straight away. And so that they're really powerful street photography photos when you get that contrast in people. And a contrast can also be someone where you could have a mass of people crossing the street. They're all wearing suits, and then you've got the one person who's just in casual attire. It just pops and stands out amongst that sea of black, especially in winter in Melbourne. Everyone just wears black. Alrighty, okay. We'll wrap it up there. Thanks again for joining me, and enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.